Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. We're here with the next episode of the Immergence show. Today we're going to talk about storytelling, a very fun topic with some examples that we're going to share with you. And also we're going to really get deep into the psychology behind the storytelling, how you can take different elements and apply it to your branding and storytelling marketing, and how you can use these immersive experiences and emerging tech to tell the best stories, and what are the benefits of the storytelling. So all of that we're going to cover today. We have great examples of different brands and different celebrities and experts. And yeah, before we get started, quick introduction. I'm Nico Farah. I'm a creative technologist, and I have Philip with me, who is a great programmer and data scientist. And we are also expecting our colleague Lauren to join us if she can. But if not, that's okay. We'll cover as much as possible. She's an expert storyteller with over 30 years of experience, so I hope she can join us. But let's get into it. So we're gonna, dive into like why storytelling even is important. This is nothing new, right? We from the ancient times, or even like gathering around fire, we would talk about, human would talk about like the tales and stories that will go generation to generation, and legends, and all of those things have been always like connecting the emotions and imaginations of the audience to the core of the story. And so brands can take this and also use this for a way to communicate and connect with their audience. And so if you think about like what are the elements that really help with this, is that there's a kind of like, if you think about the scientific part, when we are listening to a story, our brain releases oxytocin and dopamine. And so it's very interesting because with these hormones, and Philip is a biologist, so he knows better than me. With these hormones, this kind of makes the story be more memorable, as if we're experiencing it ourselves. And so we basically start empathizing with the characters of the story, and their emotions, motivations, and conflicts become like ours. So naturally, as human, we're kind of in this wired form that we like to empathize and mirror different emotions, even when we're talking, right? And so similarly in the stories, that's why we cry when a scene is dramatic, and stuff like that. So this transportation of emotions and this sympathy that is created, it makes it a very deep and intrinsic connection. So that's on the scientific part. Now, what are the other elements? The overall idea of storytelling and the fact that you can like engage different senses, like listening, reading, even smell, or like interactivity within immersive experiences and stuff like that. The more of these senses we're engaging, this is going to make things more memorable for us, and more meaningful. And if you even think about like, there's some memorizing practices, like if they say you don't remember the names of guests in a party, try to like make up a story of them. So that's the same thing, the other way around, like the reverse way of using storytelling for memorizing. So this is how, again, brands and marketers can use this in their advantage. If there are elements of what you want to communicate with the brand, with the audience, that you want them to remember, uh, this is storytelling is so much more powerful than giving them isolated facts. So the other element of that is persuasion. When we are hearing a story, again, our brain is wired to connect the dots. And so we start connecting the past to present, and kind of like that will start influencing our attitudes and decision making even in the future. And so again, in branding and marketing, you can use this to your advantage, because this story that you're going to tell can communicate the message and the next action, call to action that you have for your audience with them. And so in that sense, they can, carry on the story and be your loyal customers for long. Do you have any thoughts to add, Philip, so far?
Yeah, I think it's important. Something that I kind of remember recently was the movie Into the Spider-Verse, right? Which was a very different way of telling stories, at least in the cinema format. For example, even changing the atmosphere in terms of coloring of the scene when the mood shifts. Going from like changing the tint from more of a bluish when it's like a sad or dramatic, or to more of like a warm, reddish color when it's like a love scene, emotional scene, right? And things like, because before you have things, like slow motion or other aspects in traditional cinema, but I think nowadays it's become a lot more important to experiment with different, not just words, the way we tell stories, but also visually how we show the story. I think that's become very important nowadays to really capture attention and to
Memorize it.
and right.
Yeah, and we will get into some more specific examples of brands, and we will share that with you as well. But yeah, continuing on, what are the elements of story that are powerful? The other element is making meanings. Again, like the previous discussion of, how we connect the dots, we can find relationship. Our brain starts building relationship between the choices, actions, and all the consequences that are happening to the characters of the story. And so this causal analysis is going to help us better resonate with emotionally with the story and the character. And again, it helps with kind of taking us on this journey with what the story wants us to take on. And then the other part is about identity. When you are part of a community, or a geographical location, or even a family, you guys have a shared history. And stories can also be like those shared history, and become part of our identity. When you have certain stories, or even like think about like when you have watched certain movies or TV shows or cartoons, um, then you talk about it with friends or family, and that becomes something that you guys can connect with. And so that defines kind of who belongs, who doesn't belong. So again, this way you can think about it from the brand perspective, how this can be used in a way that you can define who are the loyal customers, and this basically helps with building up the loyalty among your audience and so on. And so this is again very powerful to think about it. And I want to talk more after we go through all of this about a great example of this, which is Taylor Swift. The Person of the Year by Times that was just selected, and she's an amazing storyteller. And we're going to get into like how she has used different elements, but this specific part of like the identity and belonging, and the other, like building the cohesion between your community, among your community, this shared emotions and references and nostalgia. This is what Taylor has done really well. For many years, she has been kind of giving these little hints, and kind of giving the dots to her audience, and helping them to kind of have these narratives among the Swifties, as we call them. And so that again defines who belongs to this community and who doesn't, and brings those who are part of it closer to each other. And the other part is about perpetuating values. So, depending on what you use the storytelling for, you have the option to use this tool to bring your values and norms and all morality stuff that you want to communicate with the audience. And this could be something that, in a good way or bad way, can be taken to several generations even. And we know like this was again something that from ancient times, stories will communicate the culture and the values. And so same thing, if there are values in your brand, that, I mean, there should be values. So you need to define your values, and then use the storytelling to communicate the values with your audience, and then they can carry this on to next level. The other part is continuity. We see how, again, like generation to generation, stories can go on. Like even like advertisement, there are advertisements that have been valid for many years and among generations. So is there any examples you can remember that is very memorable of advertisements?
I mean, probably the most important was the Coca-Cola commercials, right? The 1960s ones. I mean, been so many memes and spin-offs and things off of that one. But I mean, even the U.S., right? There was the supposed golden age of advertisement, right, in the 50s and 60s, when the medium was kind of just being born, right? Because a lot of the sociological research, maybe Noreen can speak more about that when she's on, came about was around that era, right? But
yeah, and so again, you want to have your audience follow your story or your next output. So as a brand, if you're creating a campaign or doing an advertisement, this continuity that comes with the story, okay, like even for our show, what's the next episode? You want to have some sort of continuity, or for TV shows we see the same thing, to motivate the user to want to come back. And so that continuity is again another great benefit of storytelling. You're not just throwing different dots that don't connect. There is a connection and there is a reason for people to come back. And then the other part is about character connection. The more you develop your characters in the story, the more you're going to have resonance of the audience with them. So again, that's why is that important, because all the messaging and information that we want to communicate comes through this resonance and this connection that is built between the character of the story and your audience. And so the more you invest into who this character is, what happens to them, and all of those details that we often see in movies and shows, the more we will empathize with them, and we will get triggered with events that happen to them, and that will have a deeper impact and more memorable outcomes. So again, our brain doesn't really fully recognize what's real. That's why like virtual reality and a lot of like different experiences work properly, because our brain can't remember or can't distinguish between what's real in the physical world or what is just in a movie or in a story. And so our shared experiences as a human, we all have experienced some sorts of love, death, family, achievement, all sorts of experiences like that, with our own memories. So when we watch a character that we resonate with, then we start kind of getting deeper and connected to them and go into the story deeper. And that's where we will have those reflections and kind of refeeling those past emotions. So again, character creation is very important. The deeper you do it, the better. We have a comment from Robert who says the best brand stories also connect to the viewer, their struggles and problems that you solve. Absolutely. Yeah, we do need to think about like the problems that they have, and yes, seeing from their perspective is very important. And yeah, we will get deeper into some of the examples of brands that have used immersive experiences for storytelling.
It actually even
Yeah.
reminds me, Nico, that this is a problem that goes into even ancient times. A couple of weeks ago, I was curious and I was looking to see when did science fiction actually start out as a literary device, as a story. Apparently, the one of the earliest texts that we can kind of go back in history and look at is in ancient Greece. How because there's actually a difference between fantasy and science fiction, right? And the Greeks were kind of the first to actually make that distinction between technologies. They came up with things like going out into like different worlds and spaces using like mechanical devices, etc. Right? But even then, the stories and the motifs, the issues, the human problems, right? Of like who has access to this technology, who can do what with it, what are the ethics, right? They're still discussing the same things, right? So it's kind of like time memorial, right? So it's about, this is a very good comment because yes, it's not just about the story, like the underlying motifs and the literary devices, they stay the same. But it's important for us to keep notice of the current world and current affairs to get a pulse about how to translate that using vision, the words and visuals into a new narrative. Right?
Yep, that is correct. And so the other element within this storytelling is the cliffhangers. There are stories and movies that we see that they kind of let you hanging if there is no clear end. Now you can think of it good or bad. I don't like them, but this is something that again, our brains are wired to have some sort of closure or resolution to this story. And when they make this story in this way, they're actually engaging you in a different way. They're giving you that adrenaline rush, and you will be like in this moment of anxiety of, are they going to die, are they going to survive, are they going to achieve their goals? And I think sometimes they just leave it hanging because they want people to finish the story however they want in their mind, or they want you to be waiting for the next episode, which happens very often. But that's the idea of the continuity too. So again, these are elements that you can use to your benefit when you're telling this story. Another element which is very important to our conversation about using emerging tech and immersive experiences is the sensory details. Again, the more you activate senses within your audience, that's why metaverse is so interesting, because with these immersive experiences, you are giving them visuals that almost look like real, and some of them may not even ever be possible real. And so the other levels, as we see, like there are devices for virtual reality that are also communicating the sound, the smell, and the sound is obviously important, spatial sound is important, and the texture, like even the feeling of warmth, like there are jackets and stuff, like haptic suits, all of those, like the more you engage your emotions, the emotion of your audience, the more you are going to, exactly, senses equals to emotions. And so like, another fun example of this is like most of the, like I was talking to my colleague Noreen about this, like why is it that most of the fashion brand activations is like an ice cream in a store? That's exactly that, because they're engaging like your sense of taste and like fun experience of like childhood like experience And so it's very memorable and something that people can go tell others about. So
Yep.
again, yeah.
Even personalized, right? I think one of the as I was reading some research papers this past week in AI, one kind of big development that's being progressed now in research is text to video translation. So the ability to actually create video on demand based on prompts. So we could imagine that not only we have these improvements, but also personalize storytelling and things like this, a lot more. So you can kind of set the stage with a prompt, so to speak, right? A guideline. But how the story actually unfolds would depend on how the user interacts with it. So you can imagine kind of having like a Connect type of device where in front of like consumer devices in the future, where we already have in our phones nowadays, every single iPhone has one, where you can actually see how we're moving and you can interpret that into how the story unfolds in real time, right?
And for every person, they learn differently, they connect differently. And so somebody may recall stuff, like learning is also about memory. So somebody who is better with visuals, you probably want to connect with the more visual story with them. Somebody who is better in listening, then you want the story to have more elements of sound and music and all that. And musical cues are also very interesting because that's another beautiful thing about metaverse. You can really use this in your advantage. We often see like we don't want a website to have a music because it sometimes is annoying. But when it gets to like these immersive experiences, is like being in those actual immersive, kind of in store experiences. You need that music because it is a layer that builds up the story for you. And so, depending on how the tone of the music is changing, then you feel differently about the story. And so, again, understanding and personalizing, hopefully it will become more and more accessible. These are all elements that you can use to your benefit.
And I think honestly, that's even kind of an untapped potential because I've seen a lot of papers and things like this about using generative audio and sound and music and all this. But in terms of applications, we only have a handful of AI tools and things like this. Compared to visual tools, there's a plethora of different videos and image and kind of graphical AI tools. But when you look at audio tools, it's minute compared to how many there
more
are.
work is to be done.
Right, but a lot of research has been done in the area. I think there's a lot of untapped potential.
Yes, and the other element about the story is the archetypes of the characters. We all know and heard of the hero journey, right? There is this call for adventure, and initially the hero will refuse it, and then they meet a mentor, and then they cross a threshold to a special world. Examples of these things are from Star Wars, Harry Potter. Philip, if you want to mention any more details. But like basically this whole hero's journey can be used to tell the story of your brand. All the tests and enemies and allies and all the things that they experience, the quests that they go through, to kind of like objects that they have in front of them, the knowledge they gather, all of these obstacles, and this transformation that the hero goes through, is part of this journey that you want to engage your audience with, because these are all elements that again make it memorable, and you want to make all of this more interactive, because the more interactive it is, the more memorable it is. And so often by creating an avatar in these immersive experiences, or even like in the physical activations, we see like I think it was the previous NFT NYC side events, like it's very common that now they do this type of activations where you are doing the different activities and kind of solving different quests, and you either team up with the group or doing it alone. But all of those information that you want to communicate can be done through these quests. And because there is an end, there is a reward, it's more motivating. And that's the whole idea of gamification. And so this is another element that you can use. And at the end, you're going to see that the hero is transformed by this journey. They either defeat the evil, or do certain things that just makes the audience, the viewer, feel good about this journey. And so again, like all this transformation, like for example in the beauty industry, like that can be used to show the before and after of using the product and stuff like that. So again, elements of stories, and then the other part is like the story of protagonists and how they start out poor, and they're usually like from difficult beginnings, and then they work hard, they persevere, or they have luck, and then they eventually get to success. And all of the challenges of like losing their identity, or yeah, going through challenges of that, and then suddenly reconstructing that, and building a whole new life. These are all like elements, like examples of that, like Alchemist and Eat, Pray, Love. So there are a lot of these type of examples that, again, depending on how you want the theme of your story to be, you can define that. And another element, another way of looking at the archetypes is the tragedy. Depending on if you want to go that route. I haven't seen many of the brand activation going around that, because I think it's the kind of emotions that we may not want to activate. But usually that's for something that, someone makes a mistake, a fatal mistake or error, judgment, that basically because of some sort of like personal flaw that they had, or catastrophic defeat, and stuff like that they go through. And examples of that, like Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet and all of those. So
yeah, I've actually seen some. I mean, yeah, you're right. Maybe they're not so few, but recently I came across it was an advertising commercial for a fire blanket, right? And it had a tragedy element in it, where the person was barbecuing out, and the fire had spread to the rest of their house and things like that. And then they had a cameo at the end that cut out saying that re-showing, replaying the same scene but with the fire blanket, right, and showing it differently. So I think those kind of like devices that help us sort of prevent tragedy, I think, is maybe how it's used, right?
Yeah, and again, emotions and imagination. So we want to connect and convey emotions and activate users' imagination. So depending on where you want to go with that, if the emotion that you think will sell is fear, right, then probably tragedy makes sense.
Right.
And that just reminded me when you talked about fire, the a story that came out that Snoop Dogg is not going to quit smoking. That was kind of surprising. And some believed it. And when we first were surprised, obviously, and then after a week or so, we saw that this was just an ad, a story that was told like it's real. And everybody thought, oh wow, Snoop Dogg and quitting smoke, how's that possible? But then he did this ad where they were showing some sort of like contained fire that you could use for cooking and on fire and stuff. And so he was like, I'm just done with smoke. But that type of smoke, like for cooking, not necessarily him smoking weed.
Emotional pun.
But that suspension and that element of like people being shocked, like, really, Snoop Dogg, he's all about smoking. And this was a very clever, I don't know if necessarily from the value perspective, but it was clever in the sense that questioned a lot of emotional engagement that people have with him, and then came up with this story, which is now very memorable. And so that's a really good example of that. We have comment from Robert again, and thank you for your contribution. Enterprise brands have done this effectively in TV commercials for decades. They did it really well digitally before social platforms moved to restricting content and adopting an ad model. Yeah, the storytelling, again, is nothing new. It has just evolved in a way that is being done. And so, as we said, ancient times by the fire. And then, next was through generation by generation word of mouth. And then was through, books and story books. And then it was the, TV shows, movies. And, what's the most exciting is now we can try to create the real world without the cost of the real world, or do something that would never ever be possible but feels so real. And that's the beauty of immersive experiences in emerging tech. And that's why we want to talk about some examples of that. Philip, do you have anything to add before I transition to that?
No, I'm here to see what you have to say.
Yeah, so there are different examples that I pulled out that I want to share with you guys, and just to give our audience like different perspective of like, and yes, Robert's cave paintings. Yes, that's a great point. Like long ago, there were people painting in the cave. So again, they wanted to tell stories of what they experienced. And actually, before I go through the details of some brand examples, I want to talk about Taylor Swift quickly, because a lot of elements we just talked about, she has incorporated. So, like what we just said, that from long ago, human would communicate through storytelling. So one thing that Taylor believes in, and I'm not necessarily a Swiftie, so I'm just sharing information and experiences that were very fascinating to me. But what she believes in is that everything is a copy, and she basically uses her personal life experiences, observation, and even her mistakes to create these fascinating, shows and music videos, so that resonate with her audience. And this is very important. So we shouldn't worry about like, oh, we don't have the content and stuff like that, but everything around us can be a story to use. So for creative people, this can be even easier. But we all have personal experiences, and these are all valuable, and you can create meaningful and resonate their audience with your stories that way. Another very important thing that Taylor is really good at is paying attention to details. I learned this through seeing the social media ads and how she's like social media posts that she has been doing, and kind of giving her audience uh, different hints, like embedding Easter eggs into her song lyrics, album notes, media posts, music videos. She's constantly making different symbols and imagery to kind of connect, like give the dots to her audience, then they connect it. And that's that, creating this identity and community that we were talking about. And so they have different codes and references. I think that she did a campaign with Google, that they had to, I don't fully remember what it was, but it was like, um, she said like, if a certain number of people um, go do this game on Google, then I will release my album or something. And so like, and it wasn't even clearly defined in her social media post. It was very cryptic. Like, as an outsider, I read it and I couldn't really understand it. But then when I researched it, I realized, like in the Reddit forums and other places, that, oh, that's what it means. And so, again, that makes her community feel so special and connected that only them can, only they can kind of decrypt this type of message and jump in and do certain things that she wants. And example of that is also interestingly used within NFTs, and how, like, when there's an NFT drop, we have seen like the project owners or founders, they try to do something similar. Like they give up hints, and they want you to kind of like figure it out. And if you're an insider, then you would know what these hints mean, and then you would be kind of following the hints and knowing when the drop time is. And so this type of information and this kind of feeling of FOMO, only if you know it, and stuff like that. These are ways to build that strong community, and kind of like even FOMO for them to go and take the next step that you want them to take. And the other element that, again, Taylor is really good at is using strong visuals to evoke the emotions. If you look at her music videos, she uses a lot of different visuals. And what she likes the most about directing music videos is this daydreaming part, where she works with an animator to storyboard ahead of the time. And she basically knows when they actually get to the shootings, they know what's next, and before and after, and everything kind of makes sense. And again, advertisement and creating the videos are nothing new, but now with these visual tools that we have, things are just getting better and stronger. So yeah, those are great points that I learned from Taylor. So what are your thoughts?
Honestly, I don't know as much about Taylor's as you do, so not much
Well,
to
yeah,
comment.
very interesting how she has mastered different elements, and I'm sure there are different examples of different, you know, experts and celebrities in this space that have done it right. I'm yet to watch. I haven't watched the Eras Tour movie, but I think it would be interesting. I watched Beyonce's movie, and that was also very interesting. Um, I recommend you guys watching, kind of like having an understanding of like what it takes to do this type of, and it was about her Renaissance show, and kind of giving a behind the scene story. Again, she basically told a story of who she is, where she comes from, where her motivations and inspirations and values come from. Just a quick, not a spoiler, but just like a quick thing was like, you probably have seen that her shows are very inclusive. Beyonce is really good at empowering minorities, whether they are LGBTQ or they are women of color, and so on. And so that goes back to the story that she grew up with an uncle who was a gay man. And with that, and how he was sewing different clothes and making the fashion for her to do the shows in the beginning when she was still very young and unknown. So that kind of set her values system on believing in inclusivity. And so this is like now connecting the dots. Okay, now we understand where Beyonce comes from and why she's doing what she's doing. And then other elements like how hard she works and stuff like that. She said it very beautifully in this whole movie, which I recommend you guys checking it out. And yeah, these are all different tools that we haven't seen much. Like I think Beyonce's Renaissance movie and Taylor's Eras Tour, they're first few examples of kind of giving a behind the scene detailed vision of what happens when you create these huge tours. And so again, you can use the storytelling in so many ways, even for this.
I think another artist that also did this very well is Sigur Rós. They've, I mean, yeah, they're well known for doing their post rock cinematic, type of orchestral music, but they've actually come out with quite a few music videos and behind the scenes and making of, and those have really been, interesting, from a different perspective. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And now I want to transition to like examples of kind of immersive experiences and using emerging tech for different storytelling. So the first one we want to share is about is from a company called Foria, which I recommend you guys checking it out. It's very interesting. I recently got to know about them. They're based, I think, mainly in Australia, but they have done really cool projects in the world of XR. And so let me share my screen and show you guys that example, and we can see the rest as well. So, okay. So what I like about this,
There are but few cities in Europe bigger than Paris and Vienna. No wonder that Sala dubbed this city Marvelous Melbourne. This is a panoramic view from the Moor House spire of St. Paul's Cathedral.
well, as you can see, this is like a video, but also panoramic. Isn't it cool? So we are usually used to like images, still images, but this is like we're really there, and I'm moving it with my mouse. Okay, so you guys can check it out as well. But this is basically how they're showing the world, and if you're really there yourself. So I can basically go around. But yes, so that was a very cool example of, kind of, if you want to do, like, I think they use this for tourism attraction. And so really cool. Highly recommend you checking it out, this technology. And apparently this has been done by Scan 3D for creating this 360 video. And, this is very interesting because, it is like, again, immersive experience that you're bringing your audience with you in a way that we haven't seen before. Yeah, it's kind of like a real world VR, yes. But it's really cool that, you have all the music, you have all the things that you will in the video, but you feel like you're there.
I think maybe the reason, because I noticed in the video that they're standing still, and I've used 360 camera things before.
Well, I just wanted to show you they're not standing still.
That's
They move too. So they do carry this 360 camera with them, and as if we're there. And that's really powerful. And so again, and it's very cool that this happened back in 2016. That is 9 years ago. And so really cool technology. And this company has done really cool projects with even Meta, several projects they've done with Meta to promote them. And so this is fascinating. Another example that mostly has probably you guys have heard is the Nike. So let me share my screen. Now we're going to talk more about like a little bit of immersive experiences, or metaverse, so-called.
Just before you go to that, but I was just having a thought. Maybe a reason why this hasn't really taken off in cinema is so much because a lot of the roles in cinema actually is about framing and capturing and focusing your attention. In 360, by definition, you don't have focus because it's up to you. So I think it's kind of a paradigm shift for them. Maybe,
well, it could be for documentary.
Maybe like video game developers or video game artists and designers might be able to combine the two and tell a story that way. Right?
Very interesting. And so other examples are like you may have heard of, like Nike created Nike Land on Roblox, and they have like these cool creatures that kind of have that fun element of what we see on Roblox, but it has different elements of a character, of identity to Nike. You identify yourself with Nike with those elements. And so again, this is another way brands can tell the stories. You don't have to necessarily build up the whole thing. You can even just develop a character and do it so well to communicate and resonate with your audience. And Robert mentioned the user gets to set the focus transformative. Yes, yes, that video we watched was great on that front. So that was on the Nike Land. And Diesel, they have another example. So again, this is about the watch that they were dropping an NFT project, and so how they tell a story about like the time that this character is looking for, and again, depending on what product you're launching, what story you want to tell, you can craft this story and the character to fit into that and communicate all the elements you want. So this was good with the music, with every visual that they created. One of my very interesting findings was this Wendy's kind of activation, which is quite different from what we're used to. So take a watch. This was brilliant to me because this is amazing. Honestly, this was brilliant. But it was really cool because I personally I'm not a fan of like the killing part of Fortnite, but this was brilliant and right on. And like instead of like investing in like Nike or others to create a whole world and partner with the main provider, whether it's Roblox or Fortnite, they just went in and created their own story out of an existing story and then made it go viral with almost no cost. That was amazing. And Robert is asking, what are the categories of immersive experiences? I assume there are levels such as near real and cartoonish. Yes, there's hyper realistic. There is stylized. And maybe we can go deeper into that in another episode, because it's a very interesting conversation to talk about the um, details of technology, like when you're choosing
Right.
whether you want to use what game engine. Like, I can just quickly answer that in a high level. So whether you use like a game engine like Unity or Unreal or many other game engines, you're basically picking the type of graphics or the level of realism that you want, and other features that come with it. We personally love Unreal Engine because how real it is. And no, that's totally fine, Robert, and I appreciate your engagement and question. But yes, with Unreal Engine, you get the best of the best, hyper realistic, super like crisp videos and images. And with Unity, you get a level lower than that. And there are other game engines and so on. And that's just on the visual side. And then there are other elements in terms of like the sound, spatial sound, and other elements that come with the type of engine that you're choosing.
Yeah.
And even within an engine, you get to choose even stylized or hyper realistic and so on.
It's actually really interesting. Like if you try to look at the history of video games in terms of like sales success, there's no necessary correlation between level of realism and the success of video games. I mean, a lot of video games even today that have been successful, wildly successful, they were stylized or cartoonish or sub, realistic, and even some games that were overhyped. There's I can post a list later, but that they put a lot of effort into making it as real as possible. It didn't really succeed, and the common element that was missing was engagement, was the storytelling, was the narrative. So like a tool, depending how you utilize it. If you don't use the game engine to tell the story effectively and well, it doesn't matter how photorealistic it is. It's not going to be engaging.
That's a very important point. And I again appreciate Robert bringing that up, because all the things we talked about in the beginning are so crucial. And sometimes as crucial as picking the technology or the tools that you're using. A lot of times, even with the activations in the metaverse we saw from the brands, a lot of them, even though they used maybe the great technology, they didn't take off, they didn't become memorable or viral, just because there was not a strong narrative, or it wasn't even aligned with the values of the brand. So it's very important that you define the purpose of this campaign or activation. How is it aligned with your values? How are you showing up as authentic as the brand that you are? And it has happened several times. Maybe we can talk about the bad stories that have been told. I mean, just quickly, like what I saw this morning. Zara, I mean, that's not an immersive experience example, but it's a storytelling campaign. They had campaign images of showing a model with some broken statues and some stuff that looked like dead bodies wrapped in white cloth. And at this moment of time that we're in, with the situation in Palestine, and people put these images side by side, the campaign from Zara, you can Google it and see, and the images from really sad images that families are holding their family members who are dead, and they are in that white cloth. And Zara came and said that they are sorry about this, they have put it down, but this was shot long before the war and had nothing to do with the war. But then, people were saying in the comments, like, even if you didn't do it recently, you could have filtered it recently. So why did you launch it just now?
Yeah.
So like, again, the story is so important, your values are so important, connecting it with the current world is so important. Or is it socially appropriate at this point to talk about the certain things or to show certain things? Another really terrible example was Balenciaga's campaign. where they had a child, a beautiful kid, and she was holding a teddy bear, that the whole scene had elements of BDSM. So that was terrible. And it went viral and in a negative way. And it ruined the reputation of Balenciaga. And they had to like apologize, try to like fire people and say, oh, this was an intern thing, or like terrible examples happen. And it's all because, yes, wisdom and common sense is lacking sometimes. And people are not necessarily like tuning, like brands need to be constantly tuning to what's happening in the world and be conscious and be like, we talked about that in another episode, like how it's so important to like clearly define, I think it was last week, clearly define your values, because that's where your audience will resonate with you. They start connecting and resonating with you and become part of your, like they define their identity with you. And so if you are all over the place and not connecting with the reality of the world, these are all gonna go to waste. All the money you're investing, all the effort you're putting in, it's not gonna go really anywhere. And so these were really important points that I'm glad that we got to talk about. But yeah, overall, storytelling is a huge and powerful tool that you can all use, even in your daily life. That's why, like, even as an entrepreneur, they say, like, you have to tell a story when you're pitching. You have to, have these ups and downs and suspensions and all those elements, because that makes it memorable, that makes it persuasive, that makes it work. And you can't just throw some facts at the investors or your customer and hope that they will buy your idea. And so, again, this has so many ways that can impact our lives and our businesses. And yes, Bud Light, another example. So there are really good brands that have done really good work, and we will dive into them deeper later on. But and there are bad examples that we mentioned. So I hope this was helpful for everyone who tuned in, and I appreciate your collaboration, Robert and Philip, for being part of this. And yeah, we will continue our story of getting you guys more familiar with the power and magic of emerging tech and immersive experiences. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll be back next week at 2 p.m. EST. Sorry, this week was different because I'm going to the Metaverse Safety Week, and I recommend you guys checking that live too. It happens in about 3 minutes, and I will be sharing that link on my social as well. Today, they're talking about child safety in the metaverse, and the other episode we had 2 days ago was about human rights, and I talked about how there are different elements that we need to care about, like how we have freedom of speech and other things. So I highly recommend you guys checking those out too. And I appreciate your comments, Robert. Yes, we love that the show is evolving, and thanks to all of you for supporting it. We're here to serve our community as well. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and see you next time.
Take care.
Thank you.